I think we're all pretty well aware that Syracuse has a starting quarterback competition. It's between LSU transfer Rickie Collins. He got to Syracuse in December. He was named the starting quarterback ahead of Syracuse's spring game. He did not play in the spring game due to an injury. Fortunately, he's all healed and ready to go for camp. The other player who is competing with Rickie Collins is Notre Dame transfer Steve Angeli. Angeli transferred to Syracuse in April following the Orange's spring game. So it's not like Rickie Collins has already beaten out Steve Angeli. No, this is a legitimate quarterback competition. We all know this, though, by now. It is the biggest story, though, of fall camp. So we're going to continue to monitor it. But for now, we don't have an answer as far as who is going to start for Syracuse football in week 1 against Tennessee. But Syracuse's quarterback competition goes beyond just the top 2 quarterbacks of Rickie Collins and Steve Angeli or Rickie Collins. Who's going to be third on the depth chart? Who's going to be fourth? Who's going to be fifth? And this is important because these 3 players that we're about to mention are all young. They all have plenty of years of college eligibility, and who knows? They could turn out to be the future starting quarterback of Syracuse football. Not necessarily for 2025 or even for 2026, but we're talking about 2027 potentially and beyond that. The 3 quarterbacks, in my opinion, that are competing for third, fourth, and fifth string on the depth chart are redshirt freshman Jakari Williams, and then you got a pair of true freshmen in Luke Carney and Rich Bellin. Let's say, for example, that Steve Angeli wins the starting quarterback job. Obviously, Rickie Collins would then be the quarterback too. Whoever wins that third string job could be the quarterback again for Syracuse in 2027 because, hey, Steve Angeli's got multiple years of eligibility for 2025 and 2026. But after that, we don't know Syracuse's quarterback for 2027. And perhaps one of these players emerges for Syracuse as the definitive third string guy and develops nicely over the next couple of seasons. And Syracuse says, you know what? By 2027, we don't need to go back into the transfer portal and find another quarterback. We're impressed with Jakari Williams. We're impressed with Luke Carney. We're impressed with Rich Bellin. And maybe one of those guys becomes the future quarterback for Syracuse at some point in the future. So overall, when you look at this quarterback battle, again, it's not just the top 2. It's not just who is going to be the starting quarterback. Who's going to be 3, who's going to be 4, who's going to be 5 is very telling on what the future of Syracuse at the quarterback position is beyond just this season and beyond even just next season. And hey, who do you think is going to be Syracuse's starter? Who do you think is going to win the third string job? Comment in the comment section below. Let's move to the wide receiver position. I believe that there are 3 players that are competing to be Syracuse's wide receiver 2. Johntay Cook, who is a Texas and Washington transfer. He got here in the spring. He is a junior. You got Justus Ross-Simmons, a senior wide receiver, and you got Amari Hatcher, a redshirt senior. All 3 of these wide receivers that I just mentioned have their pros and they have their cons. And we can start with Johntay Cook. 2023, a 5-star recruit that committed to Texas. He's got a ton of talent. He's got a ton of speed. And when you look top to bottom at Syracuse's roster, Johntay Cook might have the highest ceiling of anyone. Not just the wide receiver position, literally the entire roster. In fact, if you go back to when Johntay Cook actually committed to Syracuse and we did a reaction podcast here, I said it's on the table that Johntay Cook has a monster season for Syracuse, given his high school pedigree just a couple of years ago. And now the opportunity that he's going to get with Syracuse, he has a massive year and he ends up becoming a high round draft pick in the 2026 NFL draft. That's on the table. That is a possibility. And hey, if Johntay Cook has a monster year and decides to declare early for the NFL draft, that's a good problem to have. That's a good thing for Syracuse football. As much as I think we would all like to have him back for 2026, sending guys to the NFL is very, very good for any football program because, hey, sending guys to the league attracts players to come to your program. Players from high school, players in the transfer portal, they want to go to a program that they know they can develop into a potential NFL player. I think that's most, if not all, of these players' dreams is to go to the National Football League. That being said about Johntay Cook, he has not yet lived up to the hype in college. You look at his numbers, they're not that impressive. And he's had off the field issues as well. He was dismissed from Washington. That's why I say he's a Texas and a Washington transfer because he never played a down at Washington. He got dismissed from the program when he transferred there in the fall. So how is it all going to shake out with Johntay Cook? It's anyone's guess. I do think that he is going to have a good year for Syracuse football. And as much as I say, hey, he's vying to be the wide receiver too, I do think that there is a decent chance that Johntay Cook isn't necessarily named the wide receiver too, but rather he's the Trevor Pena replacement and he becomes the team's primary slot receiver. So that's something to keep in mind. You also got Justus Ross-Simmons again. He transferred from Colorado State last season, and there were high expectations for him following a very strong 2023 season over at Colorado State. He was all conference there. He had over 700 yards that season. But unfortunately, last year around this time, he was dealing with injuries. And it bled into the start of the regular season. And by the time Justus Ross-Simmons really got healthy and was ready to make an impact for Syracuse football, too many guys had stepped up on the depth chart for him to really carve out a definitive role with the team. You had Jackson Meeks, who was amazing. Trevor Pena had broken out as the slot receiver. Darryl Gill was a young, emerging wide receiver. There just wasn't a lot of playing time available for a guy like Justus Ross-Simmons, who we had high expectations for. Now, he's getting a fresh start, and we'll see what happens with the opportunity that he has been given. And then you got Amari Hatcher. He's been with Syracuse since 2021, if you want to call that the beginning. This is before the Fran Brown era. So he has pretty much seen it all at Syracuse. And in 2023, though, that was his best season to date, at least statistically. He had over 30 catches, nearly 500 yards. Amari Hatcher is a steady depth wide receiver for Syracuse football. I am happy that he is back with the team. He is someone that can certainly provide big plays on offense. However, when I compare Amari Hatcher to the other receivers we just mentioned, Justus Ross-Simmons and Johntay Cook, I do think that he has the lowest ceiling of those three. So I do not think he is the favorite of those three to become the wide receiver too. My prediction, how the wide receiver depth chart is going to fall, we'll talk about Darryl Gill in a future podcast, but I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1. The wide receiver 2, I think will be Justus Ross-Simmons, but as an outside wide receiver, the slot receiver will end up becoming Johntay Cook. That's my prediction. Comment in the comment section below your prediction